Welcome back to the Blue Halo Podcast and this mini Halo episode. I'm your host, Jeff Wambold, and today we're continuing our multi-part journey through the Beatitudes. So far, we've explored humility of spirit, mourning, meekness, and the hunger and thirst for righteousness. Each one has been a step, a movement deeper into the heart of God. Today, we turn to the fifth Beatitude. It's short, it's beautiful, and it's deeply challenging. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. That's Matthew chapter 5, verse 7, by the way, if you care to look it up. Now, let's talk about what mercy really means, why it lives at the center of Christian character, and how we can practice mercy in a world that often values revenge more than compassion. Mercy is one of those words we've heard often, isn't it? But it's one of those words that loses its meaning sometimes. In Scripture, the Greek word for mercy, the one we're using here, is eleos, E-L-E-O-S. And it means compassion in action. Compassion in action, not just a feeling. And it's not just a passing sympathy either. We get those all the time, don't we? Do you know what I mean by a passing sympathy? Let me explain that. A passing sympathy is one that is polite. It's like when someone tells you they're having a bad day at the office coffee machine and you say something like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." And then you grab your coffee and go. You're polite, aren't you? But it's a brief interaction. That's what I mean by a passing sympathy. It fades quickly, your sympathy does, because it isn't deeply engaged. Don't beat yourself up over it, okay? We all do it. But what Jesus means by mercy in this beatitude is deep. It's a compassion that moves you. It's not brief and it's not passing. It sustains. Here's what I mean. Here's an example of compassion that can move you. It's when someone chooses to forgive when that person has every reason to hold a grudge. Have you ever experienced that? Were you the person to forgive? Or maybe you were the person forgiven. Either way, you felt it, didn't you? But as it relates to mercy, it's when you slow down long enough to see the person behind the mistake, not just the mistake itself. I had a philosophy when I worked for the police department. I did my best to live by it. I failed once in a while, but for the most part, I followed it. What I tried to remember was that a single mistake doesn't define who someone is. We've all made mistakes. So would we want to be judged solely on the basis of a mistake? No, of course not. That's only part of who we are. Plus, we have to remember we are capable of change, aren't we? We can grow. We can reflect. We can apologize. We can apologize when we make a mistake. That doesn't mean there won't be consequences, including prison time in some cases. What I'm saying is, if we address what went wrong versus labeling a person as bad, several things happen. It allows for accountability within that person without condemnation, and it gives space for responsibility instead of shame. I believe in consequences for action. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is, using this philosophy can maintain justice, while at the same time, it can preserve the person's dignity. Think about the entire story of the Bible. God, over and over, showing mercy to his people who do what? Fail, right? They wander, they doubt, and they do something else that's a pretty big deal. They rebel. They rebel against God. But God shows mercy, time and time again. And why? It's because mercy is the heartbeat of redemption. Remember, Jesus said, "Blessed are the merciful." He didn't say, "Blessed are the powerful." And he certainly didn't say, "Blessed are the perfect," right? The ones who never mess up. No, he didn't. What Jesus is saying is so simple. People who can look at someone who is broken and respond with compassion, they will be blessed. One of the most challenging aspects of this beatitude is that it ties receiving mercy from God to giving mercy to others. And this is not some transactional deal. You give mercy, you get mercy. It's deeper than that. Jesus is saying, if you truly understand the mercy you've been given, It will naturally spill out of you to others. If you've been forgiven, you find it easier to forgive. That's the idea. If you've been carried by grace, you're more patient with others who stumble. It's a brilliant and yet simple concept. If you've been rescued, you're more willing to rescue. Imagine it this way. Imagine a cup being filled with water, and that water overflows, and it spreads out all over the world. Can you see it? Now, replace the water with God's mercy, okay? Mercy is now overflowing. It's this overflow that the world experiences as our mercy towards others. Let me share a true story to illustrate the point. A man named Chris was a little boy. He was just 10 years old when he was kidnapped. The kidnapper was an older man who held a grudge against Chris's family. This man stabbed Chris, and he burned him, and he left him for dead. It's a gruesome story. But somehow Chris survived. Now, this older man, the attacker, was never caught until many years later. Chris was an adult now. He was an adult when the police found the man who nearly killed him. The older man was now frail. He was almost blind, and he lived alone in a nursing home. Well, Chris went to meet him, not with anger, but he went to meet him with compassion. And he read scripture to him. And he went to visit nearly every day. And he forgave him. Imagine that. He forgave this man for nearly killing him. And guess what happened? Before the man died, Chris led him to Christ. He was saved. It doesn't get too much bigger than that. That is what mercy is, folks. Mercy that doesn't deny pain or injustice, but mercy that is so soaked in God's grace that it becomes redemptive. Now, most of us, hopefully, will never face something that extreme. But all of us face situations where mercy feels costly, don't we? Maybe a harsh coworker, or maybe an estranged family member, maybe someone who has disappointed us. Sure, we all have. But how do we react? Mercy doesn't always fix the situation. I'm not saying that. And it doesn't erase consequences either. But mercy opens the door for God to work in ways we could never force open ourselves. So let's bring this closer to home. What does mercy look like on a Tuesday afternoon, for example? It should look like this. It should look like forgiveness. Not forgetting the hurt, that's not what I'm saying, but releasing the grip it has on your heart. That's the important thing. It should look like patience. What do I mean by that? I mean that we should recognize that people grow at different speeds. We all do. It also should look like empathy, putting ourselves in the other person's shoes, choosing to imagine what someone else might be feeling. It's really not that hard. Generosity is another thing mercy should look like. This means meeting a need even when there's no payback coming. To use a cliche, it means giving out of the goodness of your heart. And lastly, mercy means restraint, mostly with your tongue. Don't say harsh things. Don't escalate the conflict. Because you see, mercy is learning to speak the truth in love. Sometimes the most merciful thing we can do is gently guiding someone back to the right path, not letting them drown in their own mistakes, helping them instead of making it worse and piling on. Mercy is not weakness. Mercy, believe it or not, actually requires incredible strength. Remember, mercy doesn't excuse wrong. It simply refuses to return wrong for wrong. I mean, Jesus could have said, "Blessed are the merciful, because the world will treat them kindly." He could have said that. But he didn't say that. And we all know why. Being merciful doesn't always result in being treated fairly. So instead, he said, "For they shall obtain mercy." Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. God sees, God remembers, God honors. When you extend mercy, you tap into a rhythm that God himself established. Sometimes the mercy is seen. Sometimes it's not. It goes unseen maybe. But that mercy always comes back to you. And it can take many forms. And some of those forms might come out of left field. It might just be something like peace in your heart. Or it could be something that happens later in life. Maybe some kind of reconciliation. It could be anything. It might be spiritual growth you didn't expect. I get this one all the time. Just when I think I'm there, when I think I know it all, more comes my way. Almost like God is saying, you ain't seen nothing yet, Jeff. You're not even close. I love it. I do. I love that I'm always learning new things. So I hope you all take a moment and really think, who in your life needs mercy from you right now? Maybe it's someone who hurt you. Maybe it's someone who frustrates you or irritates you. Or maybe it's you. Because sometimes we are the hardest people to show mercy to. So ask God. Ask for the courage to respond in His strength, not your own. Ask Him to help you remember the mercy you've been given, the mercy that overflows from your cup, and then share that overflow with the people in your life. Thank you for joining me for today's episode in our Beatitude series. Blessed are the merciful is more than a teaching. It's an invitation to live differently, to love differently, and to trust that God's mercy will surround you as you walk in His ways. If this episode encouraged you, share it with someone who might need a reminder of God's compassion. Join us next time as we explore the 6th Beatitude and continue this journey toward a life shaped by the heart of Jesus. Until then, walk in grace, live in mercy, and reflect the blue halo of God's presence wherever you may go.
Love is the reason